Good afternoon, everyone. This is the April 7, 2025 meeting of the House Naming and Designating Committee. Ms. Clerk, please take the roll. All right, we have 9 members present. We have a quorum. Before we get to our first item of business, are there any personal orders? Seeing none, item number 1, SJR 45. Chairman Sapicki, is there a second? Second. Mr. Chairman Sapicki, you have a motion and a second. Please explain your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I do apologize for coming at this late order. This is a Senate joint resolution that did not make the filing deadline in the House. It names the month of March, Athletic Trainers March, and that's all it does, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that presentation. Do we have any questions for the sponsor? Speaker Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was a football manager at University of Tennessee when I was up there. Does this cover managers too?
Chairman Sapicki.
Just athletic trainers, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Any further comments or questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, we are ready to vote. Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 9 ayes.
The bill passes, moves on to Education Committee with a positive recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee.
Next, members, we have item number 2, HJR 318. Do we have a motion and a second? Representative Shaw, you have a motion and a second. Please explain your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This Monday, April the 7th, we're about to make history here in the legislature. We have a House joint resolution that we think is the best that we've ever had. And I'm going to ask you in just a moment to allow my colleague, Representative Faison, to explain the House resolution. But I'd like to say to this committee, before we explain it, that I am positive after you hear what it's going to do, each one of the members of this committee probably will want to sign on, and you're certainly welcome to do that. We are today presenting to you a House joint resolution to show that we can work in harmony together. And we are the epitome today of what this legislature really ought to be about. So this time, if you will allow, I'd like for my colleague, the co-sponsor of this House joint resolution, to explain the resolution.
Before we get to Chairman Faison, Representative Shaw, is there an amendment that you'd like to put on the bill?
There is an amendment, and of course, the amendment is 7037.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? The amendment is on the bill. Thank you, Representative Shaw. Chairman Faison, you are recognized.
Thank you, committee. Very good to be with us. First time ever since this committee was inseminated that I've got to stand up here with you. So earlier in the year, in January, I was in Washington, D.C. at our nation's capital, and a friend of mine was doing a personal tour with me, and we walked into the new entrance there that's a few years old. And when you turn around and look at the wall, it says Emancipation Hall. And my friend is a former congressman, and he teared up, and that was something he had personally done. I started to think about they're rebuilding the entrance here to the Capitol. What if we did something like that? And it mentions all the people who built our U.S. Capitol. So I immediately started working with all of our state historians and identifying. If y'all remember, Representative Jones brought a bill to honor, I believe there was 12 slaves that he found in his resolution. We found those in this amendment. Actually, we found a few more we've added to it. We found Irishmen. We found people in prison that worked their way out of prison. We found everybody that we could find with their names that had something to do with building our state capitol. And so this is an urging resolution to our governor and to the Capitol Commission that as they finish the new entrance, that they build a bronze or a statue or something honoring all the people that we've put in this resolution. And we're going to name it Heritage. I don't have it in front of me. Heritage Gateway. Yes.
Yes.
Because it is our heritage. To me, it's a beautiful It's a beautiful thought of all of the Tennesseans who came together. Actually, they brought people from away from here too, that built our There's nothing right now that talks about who built this Capitol. And I've done many tours in our Capitol, been with a lot of friends, taken our tours with our Capitol tour guides, never heard anybody bring up all of the individuals and the amazing story of what it took place for this Capitol to be built in the 1850s. So that's what my friend and I are trying to do, something that when people come here after, they know this is the people who built this place.
Thank you, Chairman Faison. Do we have any questions for the sponsor or co-sponsor? Speaker Marsh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to make sure, and you've answered this, that it does not rename the Motlow Tunnel. That's still going to be Motlow Tunnel
That's
with
correct.
this gateway.
That is
Okay.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Next, we have Representative Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank both of you gentlemen. I think this is a great idea to honor these men and maybe women that participated in building our state capitol. If I'm not mistaken, is the Tennessee State Capitol maybe one of the oldest working capitals?
Chairman Faison.
That's what I've been told. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
And my second question, and that I guess I need to ask her just so I understand. You mentioned maybe prisoners. So would felons' names be going on this? Convicted felons' names be going on this monument or statue or whatever we're building?
Sponsor or co-sponsor, you're recognized.
The actual names of the prisoners, we struggled to find that. I would not be opposed to that because some of them wanted their freedom back through the construction of this. So,
Right.
but we struggled to find names of everybody, but we did know that there was like 30 or 40 people in prison that came and built. If you get a chance to read the resolution with the amendment, it's really impressive what all took place to make this happen.
Any follow-up, Representative Warner?
I'm good. Thank you, sir.
Next on the list, we have Representative Jones. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to my colleagues. It's good to see you. So back in February, we made history by passing House Joint Resolution 152, which for the first time in Tennessee history spoke by name and read into the record the names of the enslaved people who built this Capitol building. We worked with professors at Tennessee State University. We worked with some research from Vanderbilt University. We were able to find those names. I know the first initial reaction was, is this true? I know you brought that up, Representative Faison. And the reason why we did that during Black History Month is because we wanted to specifically name the enslaved people who were forced to build this Capitol building, who had never been honored in a building where you see so many monuments, they were not honored. And my concern with this resolution is that it's kind of conflating people who are enslaved, as I read the resolution, with workers, with people who were compensated for their labor. We're trying to make this a all resolution where in DC, Emancipation Hall only names those who are enslaved. It's called Emancipation Hall because they were emancipated from slavery, whereas your resolution seems to water down that history and say we're going to put slaves with these workers. Some of them, were immigrants who came to build this Capitol, but they were compensated. Some of them were prisoners, and we're just putting that all under one broad category. And I think that's my concern is if you go in Washington, that's not the case with Emancipation Hall. It's for the emancipated, which only connects to those who were enslaved and specifically enslaved African Americans who were forced to build this building, had no choice, and whose blood and sweat and tears are in this building. Can you respond to that?
Sponsor or co-sponsor, you're recognized.
Thank you for that question. I think what we are trying to do here is to not necessarily point out any one individual, but collectively put all of those together who had a part in building. However, I think the bronze, the plaque could say, for an example, Johnny Shaw, slave, Faison, whoever. But I think it will be pointed out as to what title, if you will, each person held. But what we want to do is to collectively make sure that everybody that had a hand in building the Capitol, because we know the slaves were supervised by someone else. We want to recognize all those people. We don't want to make a difference in anyone, whether it be color, whatever. We just want to make sure everybody get recognized. I hope that answers your question.
Any follow-up, Representative Jones?
It doesn't, because what you're telling me is that we want to recognize the slave and the slave owner. So we want to recognize the slaves who built the Capitol, and we want to recognize the person who was paid and compensated for their labor, who was their owner. And I think that's wrong. I think that it's immoral to say that we want to connect the enslaver and the enslaved and say that it's equal. And we want to do this under the umbrella of kumbaya. Let's all get together. It's wrong. And I think that these enslaved men are people who all throughout this nation, enslaved people have not been given the respect, the dignity, the honor that they deserve. And their labor is not equal to the labor of the person who supervised them. The person who supervised them did not have to do back grueling labor, was not forced with whippings and threats and violence if they didn't complete their work. These men were. The person who was paid and contracted for their labor was not threatened that if they didn't work quick enough, they may be sold off to another plantation home. They did not deal with the same terror and threat. These 12 men were. And so that's why I speak with a little bit of indignation at this, because I think that it is erasing the seriousness and the violence and the trauma of slavery by saying that people who are workers, who are paid, and people who were compensated as owners should get recognized just as much as the enslaved people who had no choice and no say. And until this year, on February 28th, under House Joint Resolution 152, had never been even recognized in this building.
Any further response, sponsor, please?
I think my response, I don't know about my co-sponsor, but my response is we didn't think of race. Race was not even in our minds when we thought of this. We thought of recognizing the people, whether they were slave owners, slaves, white, black, whoever, for building the Capitol. Simply that. Now, if someone else want to bring a resolution to point all that out, I don't have a problem with it, but it was not our intentions to degrade anyone or to lift anyone up, but just simply recognize as this committee. This is a committee. We recognize everybody on this committee. We don't recognize you as a race. We recognize you as a human being. And that's what this is about.
Mr. Co-sponsor, you're recognized.
Thank you. Committee, I would like to add that this is historically, we have not been fair in America as it comes to building monuments. You don't have to drive around the South to see that we've not been fair. And we have failed to recognize everybody who has had a hand in building the greatest country this world has ever seen. But for purposes of this resolution, my desire is for the first time that this building right up here has an acknowledgement of everybody who did something. There is times that we want to point out and divide and get into issues of race. That's not what this is about. This is about an African-American lawmaker from West Tennessee and a white lawmaker from East Tennessee saying, you know what, we recognize the human work that went into this. We want to celebrate the diversity and the work that it took to make this happen. And let's remember that. And for the first time, hopefully when kids walk in, they're going to turn around, they're going to read a big bronze, and they're going to realize that there's 15 slaves that had a hand in this. They're going to realize that there's people that came from Ireland that had a hand in this. They're going to realize that there's people who were pulled out of prison and forced to work here. That's what they're going to realize. And I would encourage the committee not to get bogged down on this and that. And if one of y'all feel like that we do need to exonerate them in a different way, do that next year. But for purposes of this legislation and the Motlow Tunnel being the new entrance being fixed, I would encourage us to do the right thing and memorialize everybody who had a hand in it.
Do we have,
Like to
well, the chair will recognize Representative Jones for one final brief question or comment.
Thank you. We may not want to see race, but in 1850, when this building was made, they saw race. They felt race. They experienced what it was like to be Black and enslaved simply because of how they looked. And so, again, my concern is that we're whitewashing this by trying to lump everyone together to make people not feel guilty or not feel some type of uncomfortableness. Uncomfortableness is okay. Because the thing is you said this will be the first time that people will recognize them. It's not. And I know that because every time I came to this building, if you went to a Black school like Fisk University, our professors told us, this building was built by our ancestors, that our blood and sweat is in this building. When my students came here, they knew that. When the students from Tennessee State University who came for our ceremony came, they knew that. And they said, why did it take 170 years for the state to finally recognize that? You have had many years to introduce this. But it was not until February when my resolution came through and you said, we had to check, because I know that you said in your caucus, some people did not believe that my resolution was real. And so you said you checked with the historian and it was factual, because it was. We worked with historians who specifically wanted to recognize the contributions of enslaved African Americans who built this capital. And so to, again, correlate slave and slave owner is not just historical revisionism and whitewashing, it is also offensive to say that their contributions are equal. These enslaved people were paid, their owner was paid $18 for each of their labor, which was more than the white folks, because their labor was more skilled, because they were more skilled in their labor. So that's why if you look at the contract, which I have in my office, their labor for each enslaved person was given $18 to their owner by the state. Some other members who built the Capitol, they were only given $7, $10, because they were not skilled laborers. But these men were some of the most skilled laborers in our region at the time. They've never been recognized. And I'm just speaking for them and for their descendants. And I just think that they deserve to have the dignity of not having their contributions conflated with white enslavers and the people who own them. I think that they deserve to be set apart, because their labor was set apart. Their experience was set apart. And so I think that they deserve to be recognized. And it's not about division, but it's about truth telling. And if truth telling is divisive to you, maybe you should assess why that is.
Thank you, Representative Jones. Any final response, Mr. Sponsor or co-sponsor?
I would just add, committee, that slavery is a stain on society of humanity as a whole. And to separate out one group of slaves because of the color of their skin is not being fair to what slavery in the world, in the history of this world, has been. And this, again, is not about that. We are trying to exonerate everybody who had something to do with this building.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Sponsor. Do we have any further comments or questions for our sponsor or co-sponsor? Seeing none, we are ready to vote. Madam Clerk, please open the vote. Has everyone voted? Anyone want to change his vote? Madam Clerk, please take and announce the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 8 ayes and 1 nay.
The bill passes on with a positive recommendation to state and local government. Thank you, Mr. Sponsor and Mr. Co-Sponsor. Members, that brings us to the conclusion of our calendar for the day. With no other business, we are adjourned subject to the call of the chair.